Get your filthy hands off that. The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. They were sharp, cold, and loud. Louder than I intended. And in that moment, in the 80th floor boardroom of my own building, I had never felt more powerful, or looked more like a fool. I just didn't know the second part yet. My name is Arthur Grayson. Or at least, that's the name you'd see carved in granite on the lobby wall. Grayson Holdings. We didn't build the city, but we owned the skyline, and from my vantage point, 80 floors up, the people below looked like ants. I treated them that way too. I lived by a simple code. You were either a shark or you were chum. I was a shark. My days were a blur of numbers, acquisitions, and hostile takeovers. I didn't have time for feelings. I didn't have time for weakness. And I definitely didn't have time for the man I had just yelled at. He was the janitor, Samuel. I didn't even know his name until I saw it on the little plastic tag pinned to his grey uniform. To me, he was just background, part of the hum of the building, a shuffling presence that appeared after 6 p.m. to empty the trash cans of billion-dollar deals and discarded dreams. He was old, with a quiet dignity that, if I'm being honest, annoyed me. He moved slowly, deliberately, and he never, ever looked me in the eye. He was invisible, and that's how I liked it. But on this day, he had made himself visible, and he'd done it at the worst possible time. We were in the middle of the biggest deal of my career, the Matsuyama acquisition. Billions. Not just money, but legacy. The men in the room with me were sharks too, and we were circling. The air was thick with tension, the smell of expensive cologne, and the faint scent of betrayal. My lawyers were grinning. Theirs were not. That's when it happened. Samuel, the janitor, shuffled into the boardroom. He wasn't supposed to be there. The cleaning crew knew the 80th floor was off-limits during a priority meeting. He was holding a metal trash can, and he seemed confused. He looked at the room full of suits, then at the wastebasket by my desk, and started walking toward it. "Not now," my assistant whispered, her face pale. But he kept coming. He reached for the wastebasket, and, in a move that felt like slow motion, his elbow caught the leg of the small side table, the table that held my masterpiece. It was an architectural model of the new Grayson Tower, a perfect, $1 million replica of the building that would solidify my legacy. It wobbled, it tilted, and it crashed to the imported marble floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces of acrylic and broken dreams. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. I stared at the ruin, at the tiny, broken pieces of my future, and all the pressure, all the tension, all the killer instinct of the past 6 months focused into a single, white-hot point of rage. I turned to Samuel. He was frozen, his dark hands still holding the trash can, his eyes wide with a horror that, at the time, I mistook for stupidity. "Get your filthy hands off that," I snarled. The room was dead silent. "Do you know what you just did? Do you have any idea what you just cost me?" He didn't speak. He just looked at the floor. "Of course you don't." I laughed, a sharp, barking sound. This model, cost more than your entire life's salary. You are a janitor, a mop pusher. Your only job is to be invisible, and you can't even do that right. I walked right up to him. I could smell the faint scent of pine cleaner and something else. Something old, like dust and regret. "This is a room for winners, Samuel," I said, jabbing my finger at his name tag. "This is a room for sharks. And you are the chum. Now get out. Get out of my building. You're fired." He finally looked up. His eyes met mine. They weren't scared. They weren't sad. They were empty. As if he was looking right through me. He set the trash can down, turned, and walked out of the room. He didn't shuffle. He walked tall. The door clicked shut. I turned back to the Japanese investors. "My apologies, gentlemen. The trash has been taken out. Now, about the final valuation." I felt a chill. The head of the Matsuyama Group, Mr. Kenzo, a man old enough to be my grandfather, was looking at me with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Grayson," he said, his voice quiet, "perhaps we are not the right partners for you." He stood up. His team stood up. "What? Wait, Kenzo-san, it was just a janitor." A moment of frustration. "We are aware," he said, bowing slightly. "We are also aware of how a man treats those he believes are beneath him. It is telling. We will reconsider our position. And just like that, they walked out. It wasn't a flicker. It was a sudden, absolute death of power. The 80th floor boardroom was plunged into a thick, inky blackness. The emergency lights didn't kick on. The hum of the building's air systems died, replaced by a terrifying, heavy silence. My phone, which I was holding, lit up my pale, furious face. No service. I stumbled to the window. The city was gone. It wasn't just my building. The whole Chicago skyline was black. No lights from the other towers, no streetlights, nothing. But it wasn't empty. The sky was alive. A swirling, violent mass of greenish-black clouds. The wind didn't howl. It screamed. A high-pitched, metallic shriek as it tore at the glass of my tower. What in the hell? My assistant, a young woman named Clara, burst into the room, her phone's flashlight beam dancing wildly. "Mr. Grayson! Mr. Grayson!" The news, they said, it's a derecho, a freak storm. It's tearing the city apart. The power grid is down. All of it. Get my pilot, I snapped. I want to be in the air. He can't take off, she cried, tears in her voice. The elevators are dead. The comms are down. The stairwell doors, they're locked for security. We're, Mr. Grayson, I think we're trapped. Trapped. The word echoed. I am Arthur Grayson. I am never trapped. I make the traps. But the 80th floor blast-proof glass was groaning, a sound I had never heard, a deep, agonizing moan, like a whale dying. And then, a crack. A hairline fracture appeared in the window nearest my desk. "We have to get out of here," Clara whimpered. "The glass. It's not going to hold." "The stairwell," I said, grabbing my briefcase. "There's a manual override. My keycard." We ran to the stairwell door. I swiped my platinum access card. Nothing. The reader was dead. "The manual lock," I yelled, fumbling for my keys. I jammed the key in. It turned. The door didn't budge. It's stuck," I panted, pulling on it with all my weight. "The pressure difference. The storm. It sealed it." Clara started to sob. Real, racking sobs. Panic, pure and uncut, flooded my own chest. I was a shark, but the water had just been drained from the tank. "This is not happening," I muttered, kicking the door. "This is not." "Sir," a voice, calm, deep, from the shadows of the hallway. Clara and I froze. The flashlight beam found him. It was Samuel. He wasn't in his grey uniform anymore. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and his uniform pants. He held a large, heavy-duty flashlight, the kind maintenance crews use. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the groaning window. "You're still here," I spat. "I fired you." "You did," he said, his voice flat. "But the elevators were down by the time I got to the lobby, so I came back up." You walked up 80 flights of stairs," Clara whispered. "Came up the service stairs," he corrected, his attention still on the window. "They don't lock from the inside." He took a step into the boardroom, shining his light on the spider-webbing crack. "This glass is going to go, and when it does, this whole room will be a wind tunnel. You'll be sucked out." "Well, what do you suggest, Janitor?" I sneered, my fear making me cruel. "Should we mop it up?" He turned his flashlight and shined it directly in my face. I flinched, blinded. "Mr. Grayson," he said, and his voice was different. It wasn't the shuffling, invisible man. This voice was cold steel. It was a voice that didn't ask. It commanded. "Your keycard won't work. The magnetic locks are all fried. The manual lock is jammed by the pressure. Your only way out is down." "We know that, you idiot," I yelled. "The door is—" "Not that door," he said. "The service elevator shaft." He walked over to a panel on the wall I had never even noticed. It was painted the same color as the drywall. He pulled a tool from his pocket, a simple crowbar, the kind from a janitor's cart, and jammed it into the seam. With a groan of metal, the panel popped open, revealing the dark, greasy mouth of a dumbwaiter shaft. Or maybe a maintenance access. You want us to climb into that?" Clara asked. "I do," Samuel said. "But first, another man, one of my junior analysts, a kid named Tim, had stayed behind, too scared to move. He was staring at the window, paralyzed. It's so high." "Tim, let's go," I yelled. Tim didn't move. He just pointed. The window, the crack in the glass wasn't a line anymore. It was a star that was growing. With a sound like a cannon shot, a chunk of the outer pane exploded outward. The inner pane held, but it was bowing inward, flexing like a piece of plastic. And Tim, in his panic, did the stupidest thing possible. He ran. Not toward us, but toward the elevators. He slammed his hands on the call button, as if that would work. "Kid, get back here!" Samuel yelled, the command voice. But Tim was lost in his terror. He turned, slipped on the shattered acrylic of my model, and went down hard. His arm hit the sharp, metal base of the conference table. The scream he let out was not human. Clara's flashlight found him. And my stomach turned. Blood. A lot of blood. It was pulsing from his arm. A dark, rhythmic spray that painted the white marble. Clara screamed and dropped her flashlight. It shattered. We were in darkness, save for Samuel's beam and my phone. "He's hit an artery," Samuel said. His voice was grim, but not panicked. "Grayson, your phone. Shine it here. On me, not on him." I did as I was told. My hands were shaking. Samuel was already at the kid's side. Tim was writhing, clutching his arm. "It hurts. It hurts." "I know it does, son," Samuel said. "I need you to hold still." He looked at me. "Your tie. Give it to me. And your belt." "What? This is a—" "Give it to me now." I ripped off my $300 silk tie. I unbuckled my $500 leather belt. I was a shark, reduced to a minnow, taking orders from a janitor. Samuel didn't use the tie for the wound. He used it to tie the kid's other hand to his belt loop. "He'll flail," he said, as if explaining to a child. He took my belt. He wrapped it high and tight around Tim's bicep, just below the shoulder. He slid his crowbar, the janitor's crowbar, under the belt and twisted. Tim screamed again. A high, thin sound. "I know," Samuel grunted, his muscles straining. "I know." He twisted until the belt was a makeshift tourniquet, and the pulsing spray of blood slowed to a dark, angry ooze. "Clara," Samuel barked, "your scarf. Press it against the wound. Hard." Clara, galvanized by his certainty, scrambled forward and did as she was told, pressing her silk scarf into the gash. The entire time, Samuel hadn't flinched. His hands were steady. His voice was calm. He was working with a grim, practiced efficiency that was terrifying. The window behind us screamed. A huge, web-like pattern of cracks appeared all at once. "We're out of time," Samuel said. He stood up. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. His janitor's shirt was old and thin, and it was soaked with sweat, and with Tim's blood, which had sprayed onto him. He ripped off the blood-soaked overshirt. He was wearing a simple, dark t-shirt underneath. And that's when I saw it. My phone's light was still on him. And there, on his left bicep, was a tattoo. It wasn't a skull. It wasn't a girl's name. It was something else. An intricate design. A coiled serpent, a set of wings, and a single, downward-pointing dagger. Underneath it, a word. De oppresso, liber. My blood didn't just run cold. It froze. It turned to ice in my veins. I knew that tattoo. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. Not since the dust and the sand and the screaming. Not since the day my life, the real one, the one I buried, ended. "You," I whispered. My voice was a dry rattle. The world compressed. The screaming wind, the crying analyst, the shattered deal. It all disappeared. There was only the tattoo. Sarge? The name was ripped from my throat. A name I hadn't spoken, hadn't dared to even think. In 2 decades, Samuel froze. He had been bending to lift the analyst. He turned, slowly. His eyes, in the harsh glare of my phone, were black pits. "Don't you ever," he whispered, his voice shaking with a rage that eclipsed my own. "Call me that." "But it's me," I said, my mind fracturing. "It's Arthur, Private Grayson, 5th Special Forces Group, Afghanistan, 2004. Samuel's face, the face of the old, invisible janitor, crumpled. It was like watching a mountain collapse. The mask of the calm commander, the mask of the shuffling cleaner, they both fell away. And all that was left was a man. A broken man. "I know who you are, Grayson," he spat. "I've known who you were since the day I took this job. But You're Sergeant Evans, I stammered. My CO. You were. I was, what? He snapped. A hero? Is that what you remember? You saved my life. I tried, he roared, and the sound echoed in the dark. And in return, you ruined mine. The window finally gave way. With a sound like the end of the world, the 80th floor glass didn't just break, it imploded. A wall of wind, rain, and debris blasted into the boardroom. The conference table, a solid block of mahogany that took 10 men to move, was lifted and thrown against the far wall like a toy. Down, Samuel screamed. He tackled me, and we tumbled to the floor, him covering my body with his own. Clara screamed. The injured analyst, Tim, was protected by the overturned table. The world was a screaming vortex of paper, glass, and wind. It lasted 10 seconds. It lasted an eternity. And then, it was quiet. Not silent. But the initial blast was over. The wind was still howling, but it was through the room now, not at it. Samuel rolled off me. He was cut. A piece of glass was embedded in his shoulder. He didn't seem to notice. We go. Now, he said. He grabbed Tim, the analyst, and slung the kid's good arm over his shoulder. Clara, you take the flashlight. Grayson, you take his legs. We move. I didn't argue. I, Arthur Grayson, CEO, Billionaire, Shark. I grabbed the ankles of my bleeding employee. We half-dragged, half-carried him out of the ruined boardroom. The hallway was a war zone. Ceiling tiles were down. Wires sparked. The shaft, Samuel said, heading for the maintenance panel he'd opened. It's our only way. It'll be a long way down. Sarge. Samuel. I didn't know what to say. Shut up and move, he said. We got to the shaft. It was black. A metal ladder was bolted to the side. Clara, you go first, Samuel commanded. Flashlight on the rungs. Don't look down. Go. She nodded, her face a mask of terror, and started climbing. Your turn, Grayson, he said. What about Tim? What about you? I'm going to strap him to my back, Samuel said, already ripping cables from the wall, weaving a makeshift harness. I've done it before. Now go. I can't, I whispered. The blackness. The height. You can't? He laughed, a bitter, barking sound. You're Arthur Grayson. You can do anything. You told me that yourself. Back when you were 19, rich, and stupid, and you called in that air support on your own position because you panicked. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The firefight, the ambush in the Tora Bora Mountains. I was the radio man. I was supposed to be the link. We were pinned down, and I panicked. I called in the coordinates, the wrong ones. The coordinates for the ridge we were on. Sergeant Evans had realized it. He tackled me, grabbed the radio, and screamed, "Abort! Abort!" But it was too late. The danger-close munitions rained down. Fire and rock. I was buried. When I woke up, he was digging me out with his bare hands. He was bloody. He was screaming, not at me, at them. Man down! Man down! He'd saved me. He and another man, Corporal Davis. They dragged me to cover, and in the chaos, Evans was hit. A piece of shrapnel took out his knee. The after-action report. They blamed him. They said he made the bad call. The radio logs were corrupted. My father, back in the States, had made a few calls. I was a hero, wounded in action. Sergeant Evans was the scapegoat. Dishonorable discharge. Stripped of his rank, his career, his life. Over. And I let it happen. I had buried that memory so deep, I'd almost convinced myself it was a nightmare. You. I looked at him. The man I'd called a janitor. The man I'd humiliated. Davis. He died, didn't he? Samuel's face was unreadable in the dark. He died saving a coward. Now. Get in the shaft. I climbed in. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the rungs. I'm sorry, I whispered, the tears mixing with the rain on my face. I was a kid. I was scared. We were all kids, he said, his voice coming from above me as he started securing Tim. But you were the only coward. He started climbing down, Tim strapped to his back, one-handed, one-legged. His bad knee, the one he got saving me, groaning with every move. We climbed. We climbed for what felt like years. 80 floors in the dark. Clara's sobs, my grunts, the awful wet breathing of the analyst, and Samuel. Samuel was silent, except for, he was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, a steady, rhythmic count, the same way he used to count for us on forced marches, a cadence to keep the fear at bay. Why? I finally asked, my voice echoing in the metal tube. We'd stopped for a rest on a service platform. Why are you here, Samuel? At my building? As a janitor? He sat down, his back against the wall, carefully adjusting Tim's tourniquet. He shined the flashlight on his own face. He looked 100 years old. Where else was I supposed to go? He said, his voice devoid of emotion. A dishonorable discharge. You can't get a job as a security guard. You can't own a weapon. You lose your pension. You lose your self. I worked construction. I washed dishes. I was invisible. But my building? I saw your face on a magazine, he said. Arthur Grayson, the Shark of Chicago, the self-made billionaire. I saw, and I had to see. I had to see what kind of man you'd become. The man who built his empire on my bones. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, he said, his voice rising. You took your hero's welcome, your Purple Heart for a scratch, and you ran. You ran just like you did on that mountain. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. I've been working here for 3 years, Grayson. 3 years. I've emptied your trash. I've cleaned your toilet. I've watched you walk by me every single day. And not once did you see me. He sighed, the anger leaving him, replaced by a profound, bottomless weariness. Today, when you yelled at me, in front of those men, when you called me chum, I wasn't even mad. I felt sorry for you. Sorry for me? Yeah, he said, because you're still that same scared kid on the mountain. You're just hiding in a bigger, more expensive hole. You think all this, he waved his hand at the dark, makes you a man, makes you strong. But you're the weakest person I've ever known. He checked Tim's pulse. He's fading. We have to move. He stood up, his knee popping. He didn't wince. He just started climbing again. We made it. We reached the lobby 6 hours later. It was dawn. The storm had passed. The lobby was a mess of broken glass and flooded floors. Firefighters and paramedics were swarming. The moment they saw us, they rushed over. They took Tim, praising Samuel for the tourniquet. You saved his life, man, one of them said. Samuel just nodded. He unstrapped the cables and just stood there, dripping, bleeding, and invisible again. Clara was taken to a triage center. I was fine. Physically, I watched Samuel. He looked at the chaos, at the destroyed lobby of my building. Then, he turned and started walking toward the broken main doors, toward the street. Wait! I yelled, running after him. Samuel, wait! He stopped, but he didn't turn around. Where are you going? I panted, catching up to him. Home, he said. What? What are you going to do? He finally turned. He looked at me, this man I had destroyed, this man who had just saved me for a second time. I don't know, he said. Get a new job, I guess. You fired me. I had no words. What could I say? I'm sorry felt like an insult. Thank you felt like a joke. Don't, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Don't go. Come with me. I have to fix this. Fix what, Grayson? He said. My knee? My career? The last 20 years? You can't fix what's broken. I can try, I said. I can tell the truth. He stared at me for a long time. I saw the janitor. I saw the sergeant. And for the first time, I saw the man. The truth, he said, is a funny thing. It doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it just shows you the bars on the cage. He turned and walked away. He limped out into the shattered daylight of the Chicago morning. And I let him go. For a week, I was a ghost. My company was in chaos. The deal was dead. My building was condemned. But I didn't care. I sat in my penthouse, the one that hadn't been hit, and I just thought. I thought about Sergeant Evans, about Corporal Davis, about the scared 9-year-old kid I used to be, and the monster I had become. Samuel was right. I was a coward. I had been running for 20 years. So I stopped. The next day, I didn't call my lawyers. I didn't call my PR team. I called a reporter. A real one. And then I called the Pentagon. The story was explosive. Billionaire CEO admits war crime cover-up. My stock plummeted. My board of directors fired me. My name was dragged through the mud. I was called a traitor, a liar, a coward, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. The military reopened the investigation. With my testimony, the truth came out. The corrupted logs were found. The calls my father made were exposed. Sergeant Samuel Evans was fully exonerated. His rank was restored. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, retroactively, for his heroism. His dishonorable discharge was changed to an honorable one, with full back pay. Corporal Davis was awarded the Silver Star, posthumously. His family finally knew he'd died a hero, not in a training accident. And me? I was charged with perjury, with making false statements to federal investigators. I pleaded guilty. I served 18 months in a minimum security prison. When I got out, I had nothing. The company was gone. My name was a curse. My penthouse was sold to pay the lawsuits. I'm not a shark anymore. I'm not even Chum. I'm just Arthur. I'm telling you this story from a small desk in the back of a VFW hall. I'm a volunteer. I help vets fill out their VA paperwork. It's not much, but it's something. And Samuel? I see him sometimes. He didn't take the back pay. He donated all of it, millions, to a fund for wounded veterans and to Corporal Davis's family. He runs this place. He's not Sergeant Evans anymore. He's not the janitor. He's just Samuel. He's the guy who makes sure the coffee is hot, and the guys who come in here have a place to sit. He's the man who sees the invisible. He just walked in. He's limping, like he always does. He saw me writing this. "What's that, Grayson?" he asked, his voice calm. "Your memoirs?" "Something like that," I said, closing the laptop. "Don't make yourself the hero," he said, with a ghost of a smile. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm not even in the story. I'm just the guy who spilled the coffee." He laughed. A real warm laugh. He poured himself a cup and one for me. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking. We're short-staffed for the fundraiser next week. You're not busy." It wasn't a question. It was a command. "Yes, Sarge," I said. He looked at me, and his eyes weren't empty anymore. "That's not my name, Arthur. But it's a start." He walked away, and I was left here, with my coffee. It's funny. I spent my whole life trying to get to the 80th floor, to look down on everyone. And it turned out the only real thing I ever did was learn how to look up from the very bottom. Have you ever walked past someone and not seen them? The janitor in your office, the cashier at the store, the person holding a sign on the corner. Maybe take a second look. You never know. You might not be looking at Chum. You might be looking at the shark, who's been through a hell you can't even imagine. You might be looking at a hero. Make sure to subscribe. We've got more stories to tell.